Hello, Liz.
Hey, I beat you to your meeting.
You did. I'm impressed. I think you're always the first one in.
That's my goal.
Are you going to share video with us tonight or just?
No, it's got another mark on my face, so I'm going to be black again, but that's all right.
Oh, come on. That doesn't show much. All right. Well, good evening.
Good evening. We enjoyed our last class. I haven't pulled it up on YouTube yet, so I didn't listen to it again, but we've got the printout for tonight, so we should be ready to go.
Well, you're going to see all that on the screen, so not a problem. Okay. Looks like everything is ready here. I'm going to take one more cough drop, see if I can avoid coughing at all during class.
Yeah, we wouldn't want a super spreader event.
That's right. Well, I turned off the virus function in Zoom for this for this call.
Way to go.
So you should be safe. Hang on, I'm going to turn the lights down a tad. That looks better. Pete, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself, Jim?
Say again?
Pretty good. And you?
Doing well. Doing well. Excuse me, I need to refill this water bottle. Hello, Kathleen.
Hello. You know, I'm one of those people that always show up at church on time too, so I don't know.
Good for you.
So are you, though. You and
Hey, Karen.
you always. Yep, Karen. Is she here?
Up in the corner.
Oh, there you are. I got to get you. There you go. You and we're always on time.
I just looked at the clock and went, ah!
Well, did you have time to make your cup of tea?
I have some water.
Oh, okay.
Ellen.
Yep, there's Ellen.
I can't see you guys. I
Uh-oh.
can hear you.
We look
can
the
see
same.
you.
Oh, good. Glad to hear you haven't changed.
No, not at all.
So we probably all have a little bit. It's been so long. There we go.
Hi.
Yeah, and there's Rick.
Hi, Rick. Hi, Ellen.
My Rick isn't joining us tonight. He's not feeling very good. He said, "You go ahead. You can teach me everything you know." I'm like, yeah.
Sorry he's not feeling good.
Yeah. Well, tell him hi for us. We
Okay.
will miss him.
I will. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Sharon, welcome.
Hey, Jim,
Doug Johnson
with
normal glasses.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, Rick.
Did Suleiman also discover the Minoan civilization or something like that?
I don't know about the discovery of Minoan. And what was the name you mentioned?
Heinrich Schliemann?
I don't even know him, Rick.
Oh, he's the guy who found Troy.
Okay. Okay.
And the archaeological world got upset because he was a rookie person, but he discovered both the Trojan site, but also a site that I thought it was the Minoan strike. And they were really upset that he got the credit for two major sites.
You know, I haven't read about the personalities in archaeology. I've really focused on artifacts. So
Hi, Lunches.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
hello,
I'll bet it's
Florida.
warmer there than here.
It's chillier than we'd like here. I think it was in the 50s today.
Oh, that's chilly. Yeah.
It is chilly for
It
Florida.
was in the 50s here too.
There you
Not
go.
quite.
That was our high.
Hi
There's
there.
Abby.
Hi,
Oh, where's Abby?
there.
Where's Max? Got Max there?
Yeah.
You're gonna come splash, Rick?
Hello, Mike.
There he is.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, Sonia.
Hi.
Ah, there's Sonia.
Welcome. 7:02. I think we'll wait a couple minutes, see who else might join us.
Full professors usually get 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. I can't go that long then. I am definitely not a full professor.
I'm going to turn things off.
We do have 14 of us. We had 3 people this morning, so there might be a few extras join us. And Rick isn't coming. That's 15. Okay.
She got to 25.
Chad Lynch, how was school? I hear it's been challenging.
Today was half good, half bad. We just after lunch, the kids lose it. Normal schools. Oh, we're on mute. Oh, normal schools, kids will at least maybe get somewhat of a good lunch. At my school, they barely eat and they eat sugar, and so in the afternoons they're a mess.
Oh, great.
Absolute mess. So,
Oh, wow.
when you don't have a good balanced diet and you're just drinking sugar and eating sugar for lunch, it makes for very difficult afternoons for the teachers. So,
Wow.
but the morning was great conversations because we're talking about the Bill of Rights with the kids, and a lot of them have had firsthand, situations with active police officers and stuff like that. So they've had experiences with their First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights, so yeah, as a middle schooler, they've dealt more with more of their Bill of Rights than I have. So it's interesting to talk to them about that. So
Fascinating.
So do you eat sugar for lunch too, Chad, just to keep pace?
no, I'm eating great food that Sarah makes for me for leftovers and stuff the next day. It's good stuff. So I'm getting enough energy. That's definitely not the problem. I have enough energy to go the full day. It's just frustration is more than anything else.
I thought you got some of that Snickers popcorn or something.
Yes.
That looks so good.
There's not a pill you could take or something you could eat to manage frustration. That's
Are
too
the
bad.
kids bringing their own lunch, or are they buying stuff there at school?
well, everyone at my school gets free lunch and free breakfast, but the food isn't very good.
Oh,
And so most of them don't eat it. They just eat the sugar from the lunches or whatever they can buy, like an ice cream cone or something.
okay.
So they might have $1 that they could purchase something there. So many of them walk through the line, get the food, and then just dump it in the trash on the way out. So.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can vouch for it that it tastes bad.
It looks really bad. It might not taste bad. I haven't tasted it, but it doesn't look very good. But yeah.
All right. Well, Lynn, Chad, hang in there.
Yeah.
No one else has joined us. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Got a cough drop I'm going to get rid of so I can actually talk. Join me for a quick word of prayer, and then I'll share my screen. Father God, in this new year, as we read about the Jesus I am statements, I pray that you would be our light to our eyes and our minds. Lord, would you be the bread of life to fill us and nourish us? Lord, would you be our shepherd and the gate where we shelter behind, that the things of our life come through the gate. Lord, tonight, open our eyes to this topic of archaeology and how it informs our Christian faith. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks, guys. Glad everyone can be here. I'm going to share my screen if my mouse will cooperate. There it is. And I want that. And share. And it should be up for you. I assume everyone can see that.
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. 1 week ago, we began with an overview of archaeology, and then we looked at 5 specific artifacts that were, I called surprises to biblical skeptics in the 19th century. To be fair, those skeptics had some reason to question the historical reliability of the Bible, at least at that time. As archaeology progressed into the 20th century, more evidence accumulated, leading to Nelson Glueck's statements that I shared with you last week, statements that are in page 2 of your handout, how Glueck concluded that no discovery has disproven a biblical reference. And his second statement, scores of findings confirm historical statements in the Bible. Tonight, I want to continue on that theme and look at 4 artifacts called the 4 Iron Age stelae. And stele is plural for steel, and a stele is an upright, usually flat stone slab bearing an inscription. This was a common way for kings in the ancient world to record in a monumental way some of their accomplishments, events during their reign. I will mention here, if the words steel and stele are unfamiliar, there are, in the dictionary, there's more than one way to spell these and more than one way to pronounce these words. British English seems to have a different usage than American English. So if you're familiar with a different pronunciation or spelling, I won't quibble with that. There just doesn't seem to be a single convention about the correct way to do it. So I'm going to use steel for singular, stele for plural. All right, let's jump in here. These 4 stele are 4 known, found, discovered stone inscriptions from the Iron Age that contain the name Israel. And that's why they get lumped together, talked about together. All 4 inscriptions were created by kings of neighboring kingdoms to commemorate victories in battle over Israel or Judah. So that's kind of interesting. Israel shows up in the histories of these other kingdoms based on their relations with them, and often based on some kind of warfare. The first one we're going to look at is called the Merneptah stele. Here's a picture of it. This is page 5 in your notes, so you have a little information about it there. It's on exhibit in the Egypt Museum in Cairo. Being an Egyptian inscription in its origin, it's written in that language, Egyptian hieroglyphs, was discovered in 1896, and it dates back to 1208 or 1209 BC. And in Egypt, we know a lot about the succession of the pharaohs through time. And this particular monument was created by a pharaoh named Merneptah. And I'm pretty sure that's where the dating comes from. Pardon me. Well, this is a remarkable find because it is the earliest occurrence of the word Israel in any ancient artifact, on stone, on pottery, on papyrus, on parchment, anything. This is the oldest occurrence, the first occurrence of the name Israel, and that really makes it something special. This was discovered in Thebes, Egypt, and I'm going to use this map to show where that is. It's right down here, pretty far south on the Nile River, not near the Mediterranean at all. On this map, I'm showing, this is from several centuries later, 7th century. The purple area is the domain of Assyria. This was a Mesopotamian superpower. And so we'll talk about that more in a couple minutes, but this just happened to be a map that showed this location, Thebes, pretty clearly. And of course, Israel is right in this area in the Mediterranean Sea, Persian Gulf over here. So I thought that might help to put it on the map. So the Merneptah stele is pretty cool because it has this earliest known mention of the word Israel. But there are three others, 4 total, from this era that also speak of Israel. And here's our second example. This is called the Kirk monolith. It's from page 6 in your notes. This is in the British Museum in London. In fact, here's a couple photos I took when I was there 2 years ago. In fact, there are 2 Kirk monoliths shown side by side here. We're interested in this taller one on the left because that's where the name Israel appears. And I've shown a close-up here. You can see an image. This is one of the kings of Assyria, King Shalmaneser III. And in the sky above, there are images of the 4 gods that he worships. It's also an interesting inscription because the wording just runs right across his body. So they both have an image of the king, and they use the stone for this text as well, the text overlaying the figure of the king himself. Kind of interesting. So as this is from the Assyrian Empire. Shalmaneser was a king of Assyria. And the language here is the language of that time. It's called Akkadian cuneiform, discovered in 1861. And it's dated to the middle of the 9th century BC. The Merneptah stele is a gigantic piece, 10 feet tall. Kirk monolith is nearly as big, about 7 feet tall. And the key wording here is that this text has a brief mention of Ahab, the Israelite. And you may recognize the name King Ahab from our Old Testament. He was kind of infamous in the Old Testament for being an evil king of Israel. But here he gets named Ahab, the Israelite. All right, I'm going to move ahead. My mouse will cooperate right there. Our third stele in this set of 4 is called the Mesha stele. This one is on exhibit in the Louvre in Paris. It was created by a king of Moab, so the language is the Moabite language. Discovered in 1896 in present-day Jordan, that encompasses the ancient territory of Moab. And it's very like the Kirk monolith. It's mid-9th century for a date. It's a smaller piece, 40 inches, approximately just over 3 feet tall. And it's got a couple really interesting things. First of all, this king of Moab was at war with Omri, king of Israel. So here we have yet another king of Israel that may be a familiar name to you. And in this text, the king talks about the Moabite god, Chemosh, was victorious over the Israelite god, Yahweh. And so this is fascinating because this is the earliest known written occurrence of the name of God, Yahweh. I am who I am, or often translated Jehovah in English. And so this is it. This is the earliest occurrence, and pretty remarkable. And here's where it was found. I'm going to use a different map this time. So let's get oriented. Here is the Sea of Galilee. It's got another name here for this era, but it's the Sea of Galilee. Here's the Dead Sea, labeled differently, but the Dead Sea. And this is the Mediterranean. So this is the territory of Judah, and Jerusalem is right there. If I could steady my mouse. And to the north is the territory of Israel. This is the, again, mid-9th century. It's the period of the divided kingdom. Well, the kingdom of Moab was here to the east of the Dead Sea. You can see the lettering of Moab. And there's a town, Dibon or Dibon, I don't actually know how it's pronounced, but that's the town where the Mesha stele was uncovered. And so it's in the right place because we know the historic territory of Moab included the city of Dibon. This stele is really informative because it has a lot to say about well, I already spoke about, covered this already. I was confusing it with the next one. Omri of Israel and this earliest occurrence of Yahweh. All right. Let's move ahead to our fourth stone. And this one is particularly cool. It's called the Tel Dan stele. You can see right away, it's much smaller, on the order of 13 inches tall rather than feet tall. There's 3 broken pieces that are assembled as they originally would have been aligned, and there are significant parts of it missing. Unfortunately, they have not been found yet. This was found in Israel. And I'll show you on the map where it is, at an archaeological site called Tel Dan in the 1990s. So this is the newest find of everything in my handout. It's from very much the same era, mid-9th century. It's currently on display in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And it's pretty clear that this inscription was written by a king to a kingdom to the north called Aram, Damascus. And they were a people who spoke Aramaic. And that's the language on this stone. And this small stone has a lot of information. It speaks of Jehoram, son of Ahab, king of Israel. So there's 2 kings of Israel named. It also mentions Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, king of Judah. So there's 2 kings of Judah. By the way, King Jehoram in Judah is a different person than King Jehoram in Israel. And then the third thing we find on this stone is a mention of the house of David. And that made this discovery pretty famous. It got a lot of attention in the 90s when it was discovered, because prior to this discovery, there was no archaeology that could prove to us that there was a King David. The only record of King David is the Bible, but outside of the Bible, there was no archaeological records that could really confirm that King David existed. But now, now we have it with this Tel Dan stele. Let's go back to the map and think about where this was found. So this is the same map I used to talk about Moab and the town of Dibon. But now we're going to go north of the Sea of Galilee and up this valley, and there's a town called Dan, and there's this archaeological site called Tel Dan, and that's where the stone was found in the 1990s. Also on this map, we can see to the north an area, modern day Syria. It was called Aram in centuries ago, and we can see the capital city Damascus right there. So this kingdom just to the north is often referred to as Aram Damascus. And it's believed that a king of Aram Damascus created this stele. And as you probably already see, this is page 8 in the handout. One of the interesting things about these 4 stones, these 4 inscriptions, is if you go to a reference about one of them, say in Wikipedia, it'll always say, well, this is one of the 4 Iron Age stelae, the other being Mesha and Merneptah and so on. And so they all get lumped together because they're from nominally the same era in the ancient world, and they all identify Israel. They make it clear that the nation of Israel existed in this period. Let's go to this timeline. And many of you took my class in November, so this timeline will look familiar. Actually, yeah, this will work. If you were in the class, we talked about how periods in the ancient world are sometimes divided by the most prominent metal, the most important metal in the economy. So we got the Bronze Age, when bronze was the most, it was most widely used for tools and weapons, and it describes the development of the economy. You later have an Iron Age where iron becomes more readily available, it becomes affordable, it becomes the metal of choice for tools and weapons. And in the ancient Near East, the dividing line between these two is about the year 1200. And that's about the time the Merneptah steel was created, the very beginning of the Iron Age. And here on the timeline, I've also shown where the Mesha, Kirk, and Tel Dan stelae show up approximately mid-9th century. So this is after the time of Saul, David, and Solomon. It's in the period of the kings. It's in the period where you have Israel in the two divided kingdoms, the southern kingdom of Judah, the northern kingdom of Israel. All right, that kind of puts us on the timeline. Checking my clock here, we're in good shape. The next thing I'd like to take us to is this chart, which is a genealogy of the kings of ancient Israel and Judah. Now, in my November class, I had one of the pages in my handout, page 5, showed the sequence of kings of Judah, kings of Israel. So this diagram here is actually kind of a similar thing. It's just a different presentation. And this gives us all the kings in their order of succession. Starts here with Saul, his son Ishbosheth, and David was a king of Judah, Ishbosheth of some of the other tribes of Israel. Eventually, Ishbosheth was assassinated. David became king of the united Israel. The rule passed to Solomon. And on Solomon's death, the nation divided again. Judah remained a king, Rehoboam remained a king in Judah. And the succession of these kings of Judah runs down the right-hand side in green. And I've drawn this little dividing line in between. On the left, we have the kings of Israel shown in red. And you can see the succession from one generation to the next. There's a total of 43 monarchs, rulers, as it were. Athaliah, right here, is the one queen in this whole sequence of rulers. So I've used this diagram tonight because I wanted to highlight on this image how the three of the four Iron Age stelae, they name several of these kings. The Mesha stele identifies Omri, who was Ahab's father. The Kirk monolith identifies Ahab. And the Tel Dan stele names 6 different kings, from David to 2 kings of Judah, Ahaziah and Jehoram. And then you see Jehoram, son of Ahab, over here on this other side. So this is pretty cool. On these 3 inscriptions from the neighboring kingdoms, neighboring powers, we have 6 of the 43 rulers named. And we have confirmation of who they are. I'll pause here for a moment and just ask if there's any thoughts or comments or questions. Feel free to speak up. And be sure and unmute yourself before you do. All right. got a quiet crowd here tonight. You're so cooperative. Well, let's go to this closing slide on this section. And I've tried to capture some of the significant features of these 4 Iron Age stelae. The main one that I emphasized from the beginning, these 4 are early occurrences of the name Israel, and they clearly confirm that the people of Israel and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah existed during the Iron Age. There's really no question about that among historians. It's also fascinating because we have the earliest occurrence of the name Yahweh, the name of God. As I talked about on the previous slide, 6 of the 43 rulers of Israel and Judah are identified in these inscriptions. It's significant, I think, because these inscriptions are all sources both outside of Scripture, extra biblical, as it were, and they're outside of Israel, Judah itself. So this is a witness from these neighboring kingdoms that the people about their interactions with the people of Judah and Israel. And furthermore, these inscriptions are consistent with the Bible and my handout. I've tried to connect each inscription to a Old Testament passage to kind of connect the dots. All right. That finishes up these 4 Iron Age stelae. In our morning class, I got the question, why are there no stelae created by Israel? And I hadn't really thought of that, didn't really have an answer. But in the course of the afternoon, it occurred to me that 2 of these stelae have images on them, and it might have been considered idolatry in Israel and Judah to say create an image of a person or an image of a king. So maybe they were not drawn to do that. The other thing I thought of is that the 2 inscriptions on stone that were sacred to Israel were the tablets with the 10 Commandments on them. And that goes back, of course, to the time of Moses. So Judah and Israel did have some stone inscriptions, but they were those 10 Commandments, very different kind of use of an inscription than we see from these other kingdoms. All right. Well, I have, we're only at 7:35, but that is what I have planned to do for this evening. So I think we're going to have a little bit shorter class. This is the material I covered with class this morning, and I think I'll keep us in sync and not move ahead to anything new. All right.
Yeah, that's neat stuff. I didn't know any of these.
Well, thank you. Doug, I first heard of these just 2 years ago. I was in a short course with a professor at DU. And in her first class, about 6 or 8 slides in, she mentions the 4 Iron Age stelae. And I'm thinking, I've never heard of these. What are these about? So Yeah, this is pretty new stuff for me as well.
Hey, Jim, I have a question.
Yeah, Chad.
So during the time of David and Solomon, is it still considered the Iron Age during that time, or was that pre-Iron Age?
That is right in the early part of the Iron Age.
And is that true then, that the reason why we might not have much mention of both of those two great kings of Israel, which would have garnered a lot of probably recognition worldwide, is because they didn't really do much of that during that time period? That wasn't really a historical like kingdom thing, like you didn't make steles back before those times?
Well, as we've already observed, the Merneptah stele precede uh, Judah and Israel. They, as far as we know, they didn't leave us any of these. Chad, I can't say for sure why there's no artifacts that would, confirm these, or a larger number of artifacts about those kings. Maybe something is still buried in the ground we haven't found. We just don't know.
Yeah, I've heard we only have like a fraction of archaeological evidence, so we're less than 1% out there, so we barely discovered anything. So
right, 1 week ago we talked about those
Yeah.
5 fractions of archaeology, actually. So
yeah,
so the Iron Age goes from 1200. This is about 200 years before David.
okay.
And the Iron Age continues through the Babylonian exile, which is where the period of the kings end. So yes, these kingdoms of Israel and Judah, they are Iron Age kingdoms. Okay, does that help?
Hey, Jim,
Good. Yeah, Rick.
have they found any armaments? I mean, here are the things that they have discovered, but is there anything in the neighborhood of helmets or the hilts of a sword or whatever? Is there any of that evidence that's come to light that could be identifiable?
No, I am not familiar with any helmets or swords. From this period in time, King Hezekiah, in fact, let me go ahead a slide. King Hezekiah is right here. He's 4 generations before the Babylonian exile. So so I'm going to guess Hezekiah was probably on our timelines somewhere about there. There was an invasion by an Assyrian king who conquered a Jewish fortress called Lachish. And
Yeah.
the Assyrians had to take Lachish so they could go further up into the hills and lay siege to Jerusalem. Well, we have found evidence of the Battle of Lachish. They have actually iron arrowheads, and they have these perfectly round baseball-sized stones that were used in slings. So a slingshot was a weapon of battle back in those days. So excavations at Lachish have uncovered the stones, the sling stones, and the arrowheads. That's as much as I've seen, Rick, of evidence of weapons of war. And that's about the time period they're from. And I actually got to see some of those items in person at the Dead Sea Scroll exhibit at our own museum here in Denver. They had some of those things on display, and in the British Museum in London. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I think they had some of that at the Louvre too.
They very well might. There are lots of artifacts in addition to the, the 20 some that I've featured in this handout. So yeah, there are other things out there, to be sure. The artifacts I've chosen to focus on and study the most are just fascinating because of how they are so rooted at specific places in biblical history, and they name kings of Israel and locations and things that just weren't known, and really give some roots to the biblical history, I think.
So you said these are the only stele that talk about biblical things. Are there other stele out there that don't talk about the Bible, that give credence to other tribes or anything else in the biblical times, or are these it as far as Iron Age stele that we're aware of?
Sharon, I'm quite sure there are others. In fact, I'm going to go back to this slide that we looked at briefly. This is the Kirk monolith in the British Museum, and there are actually two of them. Two of these have been discovered. Only one of them mentions Israel, so that's been my focus. So yes, Sharon, I'm sure there are other stone inscriptions from other places, other kingdoms, and they fill in other parts of ancient history. But again, as I've tried to convey, I've tried to narrow my focus to things that are really directly relevant to the Old Testament history itself.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my next or follow-on question would be, there's people out there that can read and translate all of these, so we know that all those that have been discovered have been translated, and we've truly found all the treasures within them that could lead us to more
more background
that,
about the Bible.
Yes.
I think that's the case. The language used in the stones in our picture, this is a language that is being read today. It's been translated. Egyptian hieroglyphics can be read. I don't think there are many ancient languages that are a complete mystery at this point. I have read about some inscriptions that can't yet be interpreted, but I think they're pretty minor, pretty small. When I was in London in 2018, the British Museum actually had a special exhibit, one of those, ticketed exhibitions that you can go to. It was all about the Assyrian Empire, for instance. So, and there are thousands of artifacts in the British Museum about the Assyrian Empire. So one can dive pretty deeply into the history of Assyria, let's say, and study the different kings and what they did and so on. So I've just captured some examples where those kingdoms talk about their interactions with Israel. That's really been much more my focus. All fun questions.
How much time did you spend in the British Museum, Jim?
Between the British Museum and the British Library, I'm guessing it was 10 or 12 hours over 4 different days.
What did Ellen do?
she went with me twice.
Okay.
And she took off and visited some of the major art galleries in London.
She went and ate cake.
She went and ate cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't want to spend as much time as I did.
Yeah.
We both went to the British Museum twice, and we went to the British Library together. That's just a fascinating exhibit room at the British Library. All kinds of cool things there.
Really
So we enjoyed that a lot.
nice.
Yep. But yeah, there were a couple of days Ellen took off and went her own direction. I don't know about you guys, but I'm good for 2 hours, maybe 3 in a museum. And
Yeah.
I have to leave. I have to rest my eyes and get off my feet. And
Your mind glosses over.
yeah, I made multiple trips to kind of take it in. It was fun.
Nice.
All right. Well, guys, good questions. I think we'll just wrap up here for the night.
Okay.
And we've got some fun stuff to tackle next Thursday. I'm going to talk about the oldest complete manuscript of the Old Testament and the oldest complete manuscript of the New Testament. I think those are just 2 really wonderful and foundational artifacts that undergird our Christian faith. So it'll be fun to discuss those with you next week.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks all. Feel free to hang around and visit if you wish. We've got the Zoom meeting as long as we want. And thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim.
You.
All right.
Sure,
Thank
thanks.
you, Jim.
Bye, swingers. Bye, Karen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Florida.
Rick, how long did you stay in the British Museum? Or Ellen too?
I'm like Jim. I can go 2 hours. It's probably my limit. There's so much to be there, and I was looking for a specific example. Rosetta Stone. Where is the Rosetta Stone?
Oh,
And how did it get there? And it was. I enjoyed that. That took up about an hour of my time. But the other one is funnier, I should say. They had some of the original writings of the Beatles. So she was just 17, and you know what I mean. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Paul, and so that you can see how it would say, yeah, that works or that doesn't work, and that was pretty intriguing to me how their music developed.
Yeah, and it was written on like the back of an envelope or a placemat or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a Gutenberg Bible there, a huge Egyptian exhibit. There's more of the Parthenon in the British Museum than there is in Greece.
oh,
I spent a lot of time in that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you can spend days and days and days.
I spent
Yes.
probably 3 8-hour days and was
Okay.
exhausted.
oh, wow.
You have tremendous endurance. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I was also, the first time was in my mid-20s. Okay.
That's
Age was at my, and then the second I went back in my mid to late 30s, maybe 40s. That time I didn't fare as well. I was tapped out after about 3.5 hours.
Okay.
Oh.
Now, I don't know if I think it was worth the cost of admission. Because I don't last long at anything anymore.
You know, another thing Ellen and I did is we took 2 tours, paid tours.
Yeah.
One went into a room, which was one of the original rooms of the museum. It was usually closed to the public, and learned a lot about how the museum got started, its origin, and so that kind of thing. History of the museum. That was cool. And then the second tour was highlights of the British Museum. So they walked us from the Rosetta Stone to this, to that, and to the and showed some of the most famous artifacts in the museum. And that was really fun. So we got to really quickly see some of the main things, and she took us, directly right to where we wanted to be, told us why they were considered important. It was fun.
Well, and I did that at the Louvre and then went back to spend more time at where I wanted to be. And like the basement of the Louvre and the old castle had a lot more of the historic stuff, like the Middle Ages type of stuff, or the biblical times kind of stuff. So
Okay.
that I was able to do that and avoid the Mona Lisa crowds. And then stuff like that. But like also in London, I spent a lot of time at like the Victoria and Albert. But so like a tour like that is very useful because you can get sort of those overviews and know where you want to go.
Yeah, it worked really well.
Yeah.
Well, it's just so much stuff. It's so overwhelming. I mean, even the
Yeah.
Denver Museum has too much stuff to look at.
Yeah. Well, I had a museum membership in Denver for a long time, so I got to be where I could be a tour guide. I mean, figuratively. But
Yeah,
I grew up going to museums. I love museums.
yeah,
Maybe that's the stamina, Jim.
There you go.
it helped. It helped.
I think that the British Museum is the second largest keeper of antiquity, and it's because they knew that everything was worth it before the world spoke up and said, "Wait a second, what are you doing?" The British had stolen a significant amount.
And picked it up and taken it home.
That's right.
Yeah.
They stole it all.
Yeah, according to other cultures, they stole it all. And
Yeah.
Yep.
But at least they preserved it. Which
yes,
is
yeah,
big plus when you look at the things that have been destroyed in the Middle East in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
oh, I know. It's so sad.
Well, Sharon, you talked about the Parthenon carvings in the
Yes.
museum, and pretty much every day we were in London or in the museum, there was something about the Greek discontent about the British not returning those artifacts to Athens. So those things continue to be contentious and will for a long time.
I mean, it always, well, and I think, well, and you were there, wasn't the Greek economy collapsing?
Yes.
They probably wanted it to pay their bills.
I don't recall for sure. In Athens, they've built a museum to house the Parthenon carvings. So they actually have a place to put them now. So
Maybe I'm just being,
they're raising the heat.
Many.
You got to understand what happened there, and the Greeks are still fuming over it. Is the Turks put a lot of dynamite inside of the Parthenon and blew it to wherever. But can you imagine what was lost just in its antiquity is incredibly sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's no love lost for a lot of what happened during that time in history. And I learned a lot of that teaching across the hall from Chad.
You could hear him teach about it?
Oh my gosh. Chad would tell me I was loud, and then I'd tell him he was loud. You know.
Good thing you could close the door.
He would close my door, then I'd march across the hall and close his door.
I think I've seen this movie.
Brother and sister at its finest, let me tell you.
Sharon, are you still on speaking terms?
I'm flying down there on the 13th of February.
Oh, yay.
That's right. In fact, you were there in November during one of the classes. You were down there visiting with them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful.
I was there in between hurricanes in November.
Now they have a pool.
I know. Yeah. No, I'm going to see Sarah.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna go hug on her. She
Good.
needs some good hugging.
Take some from us.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, do. Tell them hi.
well, and what's funny is Sarah and I decided, based on how her sister was doing, that would probably be about the right time. And God knew.
Yeah.
Mm,
Good for you.
yeah,
Hasta luego.
that's a sad one.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Baldacci's. Good to see ya.
See you next week.
So yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna go do something productive with what's left of my evening.
You just did something productive.
More productive. I've had a very long day, Jim.
I'm
My
sure.
eyes are crossing from numbers.
Good to see you, Sharon. Bye-bye.
Good to see you too. Take care.
Litz, are you going to hang in there? You are muted, so I can't hear you.
Are we on?
You
Yes.
are. I can hear you now.
Couple of quick questions. I've started my taxes. So I think Kathy got a distribution the last couple of months. What was it, 2 or 3? I don't remember what it was.
3.
Yeah, in December. I sent out a distribution in December.
Yeah, so is that ordinary income or is that inheritance stuff that's tax-free? Do I need to file that? And if so, is there a 1099 something or other that's going to be sent?
There will be a 1099 declaration from the estate.
Okay.
Will that come in from RSM?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that comes in about April 1st?
It'll be sooner. I've declared with RSM a year end of January 31st.
Oh.
This week, basically.
Okay. Okay.
And so in February, they will work on taxes.
Okay.
And they have to deliver a 1099 to Dwayne before the 1st of March because he's a farmer. They're filing taxes 1st of March, paying taxes by the 1st of March. So yes, I think you'll see a 1099 within the next month.
So the answer is that is income that we have to pay taxes on. I'm confused in terms of, like, I know inheritance taxes, you can pass on, land and estates up to significant amounts of money without having to pay, without incurring any tax burden on the people that are getting it. Does this fall into that category or is this just ordinary income?
This is ordinary.
Okay.
And you're correct. Dad's estate did not pay any inheritance tax. And it's actually, I think it's the estates that pay that tax, not the, it's not the beneficiaries of the estate. And yes, we will have to pay some taxes because it's farm income. It's income from the sale of crops, 2019 crops. And so yeah, there'll be some ordinary income.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's helpful. So now I know not to close out my TurboTax stuff. I'll just keep all that stuff open until I get the final documents in.
Yeah, Pete, this year should look very much like last year's tax return. The same kind of
structure,
same kind of features.
Yeah, okay.
And to both of you, I'll be writing a check to Kathy this week. Because there's still $2,000 in the estate. I had just basically $100 bill to the lawyer, and I'm going to distribute what remains. We're going to, I will zero out the state account.
And RSM is all paid off?
They have been paid in advance, yes.
Okay. Well, that's cool. And then will that be reported next year, this 2K?
That's right. I think you're going to get a sixth. You're going to get around $300-400, something like that. I can give you a number if you want it.
It doesn't matter. It's
And
okay.
that will be ordinary income 2021.
And will we get something from you or from RSM next
That'll
year?
come from RSM. That's
Yeah,
right.
okay. All right, so next year we still need to look for something from RSM, but it should come hopefully in February or even January.
That's a good question. I'll confirm with RSM that they'll distribute 1099s for both 2020 and 2021.
Okay, okay,
That should be how they do it.
okay.
That's a good question.
Well, that's helpful.
I hadn't separated those two, but
Okay,
for what it's worth, it's not a lot of income, so it's not going to affect your taxes in a
right, but we need to
major way.
make sure we get it in there, incorporate it, because we don't want to be missing a form.
Good.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, that sounds good.
You guys are the owners of the One Earth shares. Did you get a dividend from them last
We
fall?
did.
Wonderful.
We did. Yeah, thank you. It was nice. And theirs comes late. I think last year it came about April 1.
I think for tax purposes, as I recall, the way that shows up, it doesn't show up as a 1099 div. It shows up as a Schedule K partnership thing that they send us.
A K1 distribution.
Yes.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and like Kathy said, that comes late, so I have to wait for that as well. The rest of the stuff we've pretty much gotten in already.
Everything else. Yeah.
So they had a successful year in.
I was surprised. I wasn't expecting anything.
Okay.
It was, I think, half of what it was the preceding year, maybe a little less than half.
Oh, okay. So it was a down year.
Yeah.
Okay. That's too bad. Well, I expect they'll continue to do pretty well since they were one of the latest ethanol plants to be built, and they had the best technology, the most efficient systems. So
yeah,
in the ethanol market, they were very competitive. So good. Glad to hear it.
How are you guys doing on the vaccine thing? Are you on lists to be vaccinated?
We've put our names into an online system, so we're registered. We haven't heard anything about a schedule, but we're expecting that our medical provider, Kaiser Permanente, will vaccinate us.
Yeah, I think we told you we signed up with the city of Garland because they've got a hub. Originally, the state of Texas had like 11 hubs scattered throughout the state, and the county of Dallas just had, I think, 2 hubs, like the county fairgrounds and something out kind of towards Fort Worth. And then a couple of weeks ago, they expanded the number of hubs that serve the Dallas area, and one of them is the city of Garland. So we signed up with them. I signed up the first day their web link appeared. And then we found out this week that there are 48,000 folks that are on the wait list that can, 1B that qualify for it. And our number is 12,000 some or other. So, and they vaccinated, I think at least 2,000, but right now the vaccines coming in at the rate of like 1,000 vaccines a week. So unless that picks up, we're still a ways out.
Yeah, 12 weeks, that'd be 3 months. So yeah, I don't expect to get a vaccine till April, maybe.
Yeah.
Somewhere around Easter, so.
Yeah, that could be right. My mom, fortunately, she got vaccinated Tuesday. So she's got her first shot, and my sister is trying to get her signed up to get her second. She should be due, when according to the schedule for that Moderna vaccination. She should be due to get her second shot almost the day I arrive, the 16th of February. So by the time I get there, hopefully she's had both shots, but it'd take a couple of weeks to be fully effective. But still, we're pretty excited that she finally got vaccinated.
That's wonderful. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm glad she got the vaccination before she got COVID. So you don't have the trauma of the risk of her being infected. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Will that be your next travel in February?
Well, actually, no.
We're gonna go down for Aunt Mary Ann's birthday, but we haven't quite figured that out yet. But I'm talking to Kim tomorrow, so we'll have more information then, and I'll let you and Barb know. So.
Okay.
But Pete's gonna be going. He's flying home to see his mom and do taxes for her the 16th to the 25th of February. So.
Okay.
Are you feeling okay as far as your cold goes, or tiredness goes, or do you still feel a little bit not quite 100%?
No, throughout January, I felt really good. I just have a little tickle of a cough.
Okay.
Most of this week, my cough was gone. And then yesterday and today, it's kind of been back.
Okay.
So
So that's not COVID. That's just a regular little cough, you think?
well, it's a leftover.
A linger.
COVID. I've got a little bronchitis apparently left over that just won't quite heal.
Okay.
Yeah, we went to see our dermatologist, and she's had a tough life. She had 2 young twins, and when she was probably in her early 30s, her husband, he traveled a lot for business, got off a plane and dropped dead within a couple of hours of getting off the plane because of that deep vein thrombosis stuff, where you get the clots in your legs when you fly. Some people get that. And so he died from that. And then she remarried about 3 years ago. And I asked her, well, how's your family doing with COVID? And she said, well, my whole family got it. And her new husband got like super sick. He was hospitalized in the ICU for a period of month or so. He's now out of the hospital, but he's got permanent lung damage, fibrosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah. It affects a small number of people, but those folks are seriously affected, if not dead.
Yeah.
It's a nasty thing.
And Ellen basically got 100% over it.
Yep, she's doing well, although her sense of smell and taste returned substantially, but she's figured out this week it wasn't 100%. She was baking gingerbread early this week, and that just creates this wonderful aroma in the kitchen. She could not smell it.
Whoa.
While it was baking. So, but that may still, there's still maybe time, and it'll come further back. We'll see.
Oh yeah, because you haven't been out. I think so too. It hasn't even been like several months up. It's only been several weeks.
But her sense of taste is good. She enjoys food, but she has figured out that her sense of smell, which was a really sensitive sense of smell, much better than mine, it hasn't come back 100%. So
okay, all right.
And speaking of smell and taste, we haven't had dinner yet.
Well, you need to eat.
Let you go. Thank you so much. It was very
Love
good.
you. It was a great session.
Well, good. Glad you could join us, and we'll look to see you next week, I hope.
Okay.
Yep,
See you
sounds
next
good.
Thursday.
See ya.
Love you.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.